What is going on, world? What's up, guys? It's Zero here. Today I am bringing you all a brand new show that's being introduced on Twitch as well as something that's going to be going up on YouTube. And I'm super excited, guys. This is The Last Cast. This is the Last of Us podcast that I had stated, guys, that this was one of the shows that was going to get announced later, of course, this week. And as we've been announcing different games, of course, or different shows throughout the course of the week, this was one of those that was going to, of course, come out every single Thursday. This is the official The Last of Us podcast that you guys are going to be able to watch on a weekly basis every single Thursday, whether it's on Twitch or if you want to watch it on YouTube. So what's up, guys? This is The Last Cast, and I cannot wait to get more into everything that we're going to be talking about here today regarding The Last of Us. So what The Last Cast is, guys, is a show based around everything in the world of The Last of Us, and I want to give you guys some insight into what it all means. But with that being said, guys, before we kind of get into officially into the show, I want to recap as to what it is that, with the announcement that came out, since we're in the very inception and first week of the shows that are getting announced, I wanted to go ahead and kind of recap where we are at this point so you guys don't miss out on any of the programming, and I want to give you guys that schedule here right now. So guys, on Mondays you'll be able to watch the Gears Cast, which is our official Gears of War podcast, and then on Tuesday is the Resistance, which is our official Watch Dogs podcast. Wednesday is Zero Dark, which is our Call of Duty podcast. Of course, Thursday, guys, as you're watching, this is The Last Cast, also known as The Last of Us podcast, which will be coming out every single Thursday. And then Friday, guys, is our StarCraft podcast. And then on Saturday is the 8 Below show, which a lot of you are probably accustomed to, which went from, a weekly show to, a daily show, and now it's back to a weekly show. So every Saturday, you'll be able to watch new episodes of the 8 Below show. And then on Sunday is our Q&A show. So with that, guys, that is the programming schedule. And every single week, guys, we're going to be, of course, pumping out this content for all of you to take in. So you'll be able to kind of pick and choose what content it is you guys want to listen to or, watch. And I thought that that would be something that a lot of you have asked for and something I've been planning on doing for quite some time. So with that, guys, welcome once again to The Last Cast. So what is The Last Cast? Well, guys, as I said and alluded to, The Last Cast is a podcast based around The Last of Us that is, of course, going to be, everything within that world. Everything that we talk about is going to be based around The Last of Us. And I want to give you guys some insight into what it all means. And the way in which the show is going to work is we are going to be going over a number of topics each day. And I'll give you guys my thoughts and opinions on those topics. And then what we'll do at the end of the show is if any of you out there have any questions regarding the topics of the day, I'll go ahead and take those, here live on Twitch. And then if some of you have questions on YouTube, you can, of course, leave those in the comment section down below. And then we'll try to get to those maybe even in a future episode of the show. So let's get into it. So episode 1, guys, of The Last Cast. Well, what are we talking about here today? Well, guys, the topics at large that we're going to be talking about, I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. Just an overall, I did a review on The Last of Us Part 2, actually a pretty late review on The Last of Us Part 2, but I'm going to give you guys my overall thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. And then, of course, I'm going to also, we're going to get into depth here with the Last of Us Part 2 multiplayer, that being factions, and kind of give you guys some updates on where we stand with factions moving forward. And then I want to also see and talk about if there are any other types of content up and coming here in the foreseeable future around The Last of Us, whether we're talking about free content or DLC. And then to wrap up the show, guys, I want to talk about where the series can go moving forward from The Last of Us Part 2 to The Last of Us Part 3. And so with that, guys, let's get right into this thing. I hope you all enjoy it, and make sure to subscribe if you guys are enjoying the content that we are, producing and bringing out on the YouTube channel as well as on Twitch. So let's get into it. So as I stated, guys, our first topic of the day is The Last of Us Part 2, and I want to give you guys some of my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. Overall, guys, in my review, I had stated how I had, at the end of the day, I kind of stayed away from spoilers overall, and I, was able to kind of just go into The Last of Us Part 2 with an open mind and play it from beginning to end. And I've got to say, overall, I thought what Naughty Dog accomplished is something absolutely remarkable. I thought it was a great experience. It's not for everybody. It's certainly not an experience that's for everybody. This is from a guy who is a big horror fan, someone who loves horror movies and horror games. I loved the concept that this was a game that had you on the edge of your seat on a consistent basis throughout the course of the runtime. And I gotta say that I absolutely loved that about this game. I loved being at the edge of my seat, being, very uncomfortable throughout the different segments within the game, having terrifying moments and such. Absolutely loved that about The Last of Us Part 2. Now, were there things that I did not enjoy about it? Sure, but that's how it is with any game, guys. There's going to be things that we enjoy, things that we don't enjoy. Obviously, guys, this show is going to be, kind of diving into, spoiler territory and such, so definitely just be aware of that. What I will say is that The Last of Us Part 2 absolutely it deserves your playthrough. It deserves, and I think that you would absolutely... I think that if you're a big fan of the first game especially, you would certainly want to play this at least. You might not enjoy it as much as the first, you might like it even more than the first one, but it's definitely worth the playthrough in my personal opinion, because it's such a, from a graphical standpoint to a story perspective, as far as like kind of where they went with the story and such, some things we enjoyed, some things, I didn't enjoy, which I'll get to here in a sec. As far as the story is concerned though, guys, I actually thought it was pretty good. I really did. Half the game playing as Ellie, half the game playing as Abby. And I gotta say, I liked Abby's half more than Ellie's. I thought that Abby's half of the game was a little more interesting. I was very interested to see kind of like where her living situation to everything. And they kind of showed all of those things. Ellie was a little bit, not as slow, but it was more, not as eventful as Abby's segment of the game. And what I will say is at the end of the game, obviously, it kind of goes back and forth between Abby and Ellie, and I really liked that as well. But overall, guys, I really liked this game as a whole, the totality of Last of Us Part 2, what they were trying to, do. I thought that they really knocked it out of the park in a major way. Now, sure, as far as Joel and the big backlash that happened with Joel, of course, the way in which he was murdered within this game was something a lot of people didn't like. I'm one of those people, though. I actually kind of thought Joel may very well die in this game, simply because it seemed like they were moving on from Joel as far as Naughty Dog, and the torch was being passed from Joel to Ellie, and I thought that there might be segments where we play as Joel and then segments as Ellie. I thought that that was something that might happen, kind of similar to what happened in The Last of Us Part 1, but they went in a different direction. My gripe and my problem is not with so much that he died in the game, it's the way in which he was treated throughout the course of the story. I didn't like how everyone, it seemed, didn't like Joel at the end of the day. They just didn't really find him as a good person, or they just didn't enjoy him as his company and such. And that goes from Ellie to a lot of the other characters within the game. And Joel kind of became very soft-spoken, which I was okay with, but I didn't like this concept that, after everything him and Ellie had been through, the way that she treated him in particular was something that, in my opinion, was just disgraceful. I did not like the way that he was treated, and I think that for a lot of people, they also didn't like the way he was treated throughout the game, and on top of all of that, the way in which he was murdered just kind of added that fuel to the fire. I've stated this as well, guys, that there's 3 parts to The Last of Us Part 2, in my opinion. This is a game of pain. It is a game of revenge, and it's a game of forgiveness. It's kind of like those three things: pain, revenge, and forgiveness. It's three big things within this tale. And I really respected what Naughty Dog was going for here. Sure, like I said, I didn't like the way Joel was treated. I didn't at times like the direction they were taking Ellie's character, but even at the very end when they showed that she was almost kind of making up with Joel, it just, I don't know, it kind of felt, it just felt a little bit too little too late, so to speak. But nonetheless, what I'll say, guys, is that this game is certainly about pain. Like, people, loss, all of those things that, happen in life, guys. I mean, these are real things that happen, pain, loss, and things of that nature. Now, revenge is something else that does happen in our world, and throughout the course of the story, I mean, we see both sides. And that's why, for me, guys, a lot of people just didn't like Abby, because people didn't like that we were forced to essentially play as her, if you wanted to play the second half of the game. But I totally got the concept that, Abby's lost a lot as well. She lost her dad, who was murdered, of course, by none other than Joel, and that's why there was that revenge on it, the revenge tale kind of started there, and then, of course, Ellie going after Abby. And so at the end of the day, there was that pain from all characters throughout the course of this story. Then, the revenge tale that was kind of more so, I mean, it was like kind of both sides just going at each other in a major way. And then at the very end, when it was all said and done, Ellie had all the power, to be able to take, Abby's life. She decided not to. And it's almost like she forgave Abby. And I thought that was a really powerful thing. It just shows, guys, that forgiveness is a powerful thing that we as humans, we all, have the capability of utilizing at times from people who have hurt us in the past, and things of that nature. No matter how bad or how good it's been, there's always a place for forgiveness. And I thought that was a really powerful thing. Now, I think it would have been really cool to have the option to save Abby or to kill her at the end of the game. I thought that would have been an interesting concept. We didn't get that. And I think a lot of it would have, obviously, there would have been a lot of question marks as to what's canon moving into The Last of Us Part 3. But nonetheless, I loved the concept that Naughty Dog put out there. And overall, guys, I just really liked the game. I loved The Last of Us Part 2. I was very uncomfortable at times playing it. And that's the type of thing that I enjoy when it comes to like the horror genre as a whole. You want to have those tense feelings, those unnerving feelings, and the feeling of, feeling helpless at times, that feeling of, not wanting to go down that hallway, but it's forcing you to. Those things Naughty Dog has done such an incredible job with here with The Last of Us Part 2. Overall, though, guys, like I said, I really enjoyed The Last of Us Part 2. Did I enjoy it more than The Last of Us Part 1? It's hard to say. I got to play it a couple more times, guys. My knee-jerk reaction is I liked things about The Last of Us Part 2 more, but there's also things I didn't like as much as the first one. One of the things I didn't like as much as the first one was I love the concept of going across the United States with Joel and Ellie and really seeing this, father-daughter type of like relationship happening before our eyes, and going through like different places like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is close to home for me, and actually going through there was, in this like, post-apocalyptic type of way, was something unlike anything I've really ever experienced before in video games. And so I loved that concept. This was different. This was more in like one location, that being Seattle. But I just really enjoyed, certain things about The Last of Us Part 2 more than that of the first one. And there was things I liked about the first one more than the second. So I got to play it a couple more times. But all in all, guys, I think it was a great sequel, in my personal opinion. And look, everyone's going to be entitled to their own opinions, guys. I know there's been a lot of people who've stated that there's a lot of loopholes. There's a lot of story holes and, such within the story. I thought it was pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I really enjoyed the way that they did the story. Overall, I just didn't like the way they treated Joel at the end of the day. But there's always going to be things that we can be nitpicky about, guys, moving from, one game to another. And I respect that Naughty Dog took some significant risks here, and I really think it did pay off, even though there's a lot of backlash and a lot of, the criticism of Naughty Dog as a whole was it was pretty major, and I thought that a lot of it was unnecessary. But I understand why some people didn't enjoy the game, maybe as much as I did. So that, guys, were, just some knee-jerk reactions to The Last of Us Part 2. And I can't wait to see where this franchise, the direction it heads in. And it's unlike any game I've ever played, any franchise I've ever played. And that's, something that I find have a real special place in my heart for The Last of Us. And that's why I decided to make a show based solely around this franchise. But with that, guys, let me know, what were your thoughts about The Last of Us Part 2? Now that things have kind of cooled down, things are kind of, obviously it's been out for a little while. You might have had a chance to play the game all the way through or beat it a couple of times. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let's have a real conversation about it. That leads me, guys, into our second main topic today. And our second main topic today is one in which, guys, I wanted to talk about The Last of Us Part 2 multiplayer. So let's talk about it. What I'm going to go ahead and do is take reference from an article written by Alex Avard of Games Radar. And this is The Last of Us 2 Factions multiplayer gameplay footage leaks online, which once again, guys, it's like more Last of Us 2 content or, things are being leaked online once again. But The Last of Us Part 2 Factions multiplayer gameplay leak shows a seriously good looking PvP expansion. The Last of Us 2 has leaked again, but this time the footage is from Naughty Dog's standalone multiplayer expansion, a successor to the original game's PvP mode, Factions. The footage, which can be seen from a YouTube channel, The Irish Lizard, is only 11 seconds in length and pretty obscure, but looks legitimate nonetheless. Now, I'm not going to show that, guys, as far as the footage is concerned, but what I'll say is that from if this is actually legitimate, okay, which it does look like it's legitimate, but I gotta say, from what it looks like it could be really, really cool. The footage confirms a number of things about Naughty Dog's upcoming title, which was originally meant to be packaged with the main game, but spun off into its own standalone project after the studio realized how ambitious it was becoming. Though it's blurry, you can see users playing as multiple avatars from the campaign, including what appears to be Mel, while another can be spotted firing a bow and arrow as two players duke it out with knives. It's unclear how this footage has landed online and whether it was leaked via the same method as the original Last of Us 2 hack, which published hours of campaign footage ahead of the sequel's release earlier this year. What's also uncertain is when exactly Naughty Dog plans to announce and launch its multiplayer title. With the PS5 scheduled for release this holiday and State of Play expected, it's very possible we'll be hearing an official announcement soon and we'll keep you informed. And so with that, guys, okay, so let's talk about this. So actually, to be honest, one thing I didn't mention in the first segment of the show was one thing that did, outside of the whole Joel thing that bothered me about The Last of Us Part 2, was the fact that it didn't have the multiplayer experience, that it was going to be coming later. I just didn't like that concept. I really like it when you get a full package and it's all ready to go. If it's not ready to go, I mean, I feel like a lot of these titles should just wait until that full package is ready. Now, Factions, look, from what it looks like, it looks pretty good. And I'm excited to see more on this. What would be interesting to me is if Naughty Dog would decide to make Factions free to play for everyone. That could be absolutely huge for the developer. It could be huge for The Last of Us Part 2. As far as like the timeline of, how long this game could be, as far as like on top. I mean, this could be a really special ordeal if Naughty Dog decided to make it free to play. But let's just say that it's not. We get Factions later on. Regardless, it does look it looks special. It looks like this is a game mode that looks to be just as gritty, just as unnerving and probably terrifying at times when you're running into other people that are in an online setting. It has special written all over it. regardless of whether that footage that's leaked was real or not. I have full faith, guys, in Naughty Dog to really deliver an incredible factions experience that we can play moving forward. Because at the end of the day, guys, when you beat The Last of Us or The Last of Us Part 2, and you have nothing else to really do within the game, that being like co-op or, multiplayer modes, you're most likely going to move on to another title unless you play the campaign a few times through. What I'm getting at is it's really going to be important for Naughty Dog to have multiple ways that you can connect with the franchise. It just gives you more options, more playing time, and that's what at the end of the day these developers want, is for you to put more time into these games than into other games. And so The Last of Us Part 2 Factions, guys, I think is a great starting point. And we very well may hear more about all of this at State of Play. We may hear more about it, later on down this year. I'll be sure to keep you guys all up to speed as more information comes out about Factions. I'm excited about it. But with this leak and all of that coming out, I think that we might be closer than you think to Factions actually being released to the world. And I'm really hoping it's in a free-to-play type of mode that we are just, everyone's able to have a chance at playing it. I think that could be huge for Naughty Dog. It could be huge just, for Sony. When you're talking about how many copies they sold of The Last of Us Part 2, I mean, why not make this thing free to play? And then, of course, you can have, microtransactions and such, which, of course, a lot of us don't like microtransactions, but it justifies having microtransactions by having a free-to-play mode, that being Factions. I think it could be something really special, guys. The really tense moments and such, going up against other people out there, coming, together, creating your own clans and your own groups and such, could be something really cool. But with that, guys, let me know what you think about Factions in the comment section down below. What are you hoping to see out of Factions for The Last of Us Part 2? And when do you guys think we'll get more information about it? Let me know what you guys think, and let's have a real conversation about it. Other modes that could be coming or added later to The Last of Us Part 2. So we talked about the multiplayer, that being Factions. But what about other modes out there? Are there other modes out there that definitely could fill this void, so to speak, within The Last of Us Part 2, while we are trying to, of course, like when Factions comes out, whenever that might be, I think it could be a huge mode for us, something that could be really exciting. But one thing that lots of people are talking about is, will there be other, DLC that comes out for The Last of Us Part 2? Or will it be, free-to-play content? I will say this. I hope that the Factions, the multiplayer mode within The Last of Us Part 2, I'm hoping that that is free-to-play. And I've already stated that I would love it to be free-to-play, because then that would just draw in more people to playing The Last of Us Part 2. It would get all kinds of people to at least try it out, right? And if you had, the way that they could make money off of it would be through microtransactions and such, which is justified because it's free to play. But if they don't decide to do that, the other modes that they could bring out, guys, I'm hoping that they add more than just Factions. Even if, Factions has, there's multiple modes there or something, who knows? But I think I would personally really like to see other modes, even like PvE elements, right? I'd love to see where, you could play with your friends and go up against waves and waves of enemies, waves and waves of clickers and things of that nature, kind of like Gears of War. I think that would be really cool. I would love to see modes like that. I'd also love to see some other free-to-play modes, right, where you can play co-op with your friends, or you want to play multiplayer online and play in Factions. I think that the experience with The Last of Us Part 2 is so good from a story perspective, but from a multiplayer perspective, co-op perspective, I mean, there's nothing there right now, except we're, of course, waiting for Factions. I think that they should continue adding modes along the journey here that is The Last of Us Part 2, up until we get The Last of Us Part 3, whenever that might be, which I'm fully anticipating we're going to get a third game in this franchise, guys, and I'm hoping we do. But as far as like when we might see DLC and, if we see other content outside of that, like free-to-play content, I would say we're definitely going to see it after Factions. Factions should be the first thing coming out for, next for The Last of Us Part 2. And then moving forward after that, I would say that's probably when we will be able to expect potentially new DLC, which we probably won't hear on new DLC until probably next year, maybe even 2 years from now. It's hard to say, but I would say probably next year is when we'll see, further DLC or a DLC pack coming. Maybe even some free-to-play content. They're going to want us to continue playing this game, guys, that being Naughty Dog. And it just makes sense. They have such a huge audience now of people who are playing the game or like dissecting everything within the game that it only makes sense to continue this thing like in a major way, whether you're talking DLC, whether you're talking free-to-play content, factions, co-op modes, multiplayer modes, all of those things, they need to continue it. I mean, that there is no debate about it, guys. They got an audience now. Naughty Dog should absolutely take advantage of that, and like so people don't go on to other games. They stick with The Last of Us, continue building the community, continue building what they started here with The Last of Us Part 2 and even The Last of Us Part 1. Really continue building that following, the fan base, and over time, right? I think it's very important, and I would love to see that, guys, moving forward. But what do you guys think? Do you think that we'll get some DLC or some free-to-play content here in the next year or so from The Last of Us Part 2 if we're going under the assumption that Factions is the next thing coming from Naughty Dog? Let me know, though, in the comment section down below. Let's have a conversation about it. I want to talk about one thing you guys know. If you're accustomed to watching my YouTube channel, you know that I love talking about current games and games that I feel like a real confidence with and very excited about, and Last of Us is obviously one of those titles. I love talking about the present, I love talking about the past, but I also love talking about the future of these games as well, where they're going, what we can do to try to help echo these games into existence and get them, made and such. One of those being, though, for me, guys, is, of course, the future of the Last of Us franchise. So, obviously, guys, we're probably a long way off from The Last of Us Part 3 because Factions hasn't even been released yet. No DLC's been released yet. Things of that nature. We're still, we're in the very early days of The Last of Us Part 2. However, I want to talk about where will this series go leading up to The Last of Us Part 3. And where will they decide to, see this journey continue in one capacity or another? So in order to do that, we got to talk about the present, what we know so far. And so what we know, guys, and as I've stated before, guys, this show is going to be, of course, going to have, a number of spoilers from the game. So if you haven't beaten the game yet, or if you don't mind hearing about spoilers from The Last of Us Part 2, you've been warned at the end of the day. But with that, guys, so at the very end of The Last of Us Part 2, we know that Ellie's playing the guitar. She puts the guitar down and near the windowsill, and she leaves the house, right? Because Dina and the baby have left. And there's a lot of question marks there as to, it's very open-ended as to where's Ellie going. Is she going to go find Dina? Is she going to finish the job that she started with, trying to take Ellie out or Abby out? Or is she just doing something, or is she going to do something else? At the end of the day, I felt, guys, that when I was playing that last sequence in The Last of Us Part 2, she's playing the guitar, and it's kind of like her memory of Joel, obviously, her last memory. She puts it down near the windowsill. She doesn't put it back in the box, that being the guitar. She puts the guitar at the windowsill, which tells me, guys, that the story's still open. She hasn't closed that chapter in her life. She's still thinking about Joel. Joel is still on her mind. So she's going back out there. And essentially, there's a lot of road left to travel. In my opinion, that's kind of what I got from it. It's like, look, I'll come back and play this guitar again. Maybe when the job's done, when she goes after Abby again. Or maybe they join forces. Abby and Ellie work together to take down the entire, infection as a whole, or whatever the case might be. Because at the end of the day, guys, we don't really know a lot of the origins, at least, of the infection. And so I think in The Last of Us Part 3, where's the story going? Well, I believe that Ellie very well may be trying to figure out where this infection started. Is this something kind of like Resident Evil where, there's a big corporation that, spread this virus, this disease throughout society, and now you're trying to kind of maneuver your way through it? The question is now, is Ellie, or is she going to go out there and kind of figure out who started it, almost, or, the reasoning for it, or how to stop it at the end of the day? Because they gave us this indication that now that Abby's dad is dead and they had to kill Ellie essentially to extract the virus from her, or, the host, so that they could create the cure, they kind of made it sound like that was their one chance to do that. So now it's almost like, okay, now moving forward, maybe they ought to go after whoever started or where it started, the origins of it. And that will be something very interesting to me if they kind of get into a corporation or something of that nature in The Last of Us Part 3 that started it all. Because I think that's where this story is ultimately heading. We know that, with Naughty Dog, their games that they've done, or, as far as their big franchises that they've had, Uncharted, guys, we've of course seen 4 titles out of Uncharted, as including, or not including The Lost Legacy. So what I'm getting at is, I believe that there's a chance that they're thinking, we're going to try to make The Last of Us a 3 or 4, maybe even 5 game type of series once again. I wouldn't be surprised. I think there's so much mystery here. I think there's so much lore. There's a lot of story still left to be told here within The Last of Us. And that's why I don't think that we're done yet. We're far from the end, guys, in my opinion, with The Last of Us. And that gets me really excited about the future. But where is it going? And I think that The Last of Us Part 2 really set it up. It set up, look, the story is still open. The book is still open. She could have easily just taken that guitar, put it in the case, close the case, and say, look, I'm moving on from Joel, which we could have interpreted differently. However, she put that guitar near the windowsill and rested it against the windowsill and left the house. What that's telling me is she's probably there's still a lot of, road left to travel. Essentially, I think she's going to go try to get Dina back. And then on top of that, maybe try to figure out what started all of this. Or maybe she's not going to go get Dina because Dina was so against her going after Abby in the first place once again and trying to end this thing once and for all. But, obviously the things didn't pan out the way, Ellie had expected, or of course Dina. And now Dina's gone. Who knows where she is? I gotta say, after beating The Last of Us Part 2, this has put me at an all-time high of excitement for where The Last of Us Part 3 could go. Because I think the amount of directions that Naughty Dog can go in now, it's so open-ended. There's so many options here. You could go with, you could go after where the infection started. You could go after Abby once again. You could go find Dina, and along your journey of finding Dina, it's almost like, you're trying to find her the entire game in The Last of Us Part 3. There's so many different directions that they could go. The third game very well might be Ellie going across the United States once again to find Dina and the baby. And then the fourth game might be they go to try to end it all. That being, of course, the origins of the infection. And maybe the infection just started out of nowhere. Maybe it was, something that wasn't a big corporation. Maybe it was something, totally different that just happened almost like, not naturally, but just happened out of, nature has its way at times. And so, there's always these possibilities, guys, with a game like The Last of Us. And it's called The Last of Us for a reason. And that's why I totally, felt that Joel was probably going to die at some point in one of these games, because it's The Last of Us. There's not that many people left, and there's going to be pain. There's going to be, difficult sequences throughout the course of the history of The Last of Us. And so I think it's important that we kind of preface that, guys, because that is what The Last of Us is. This is a story that is potentially going to have a lot more, whether you're talking controversy or things that happen. No one is safe in this universe, and that's very clear with what Naughty Dog has done. Could Ellie die in the next one? Could Abby? Could Dina? Any one of them at any moment, it could be over. And there's something to be said for a game like that, guys. This isn't just some, cookies and rainbows types of franchises. This is a very dark, visceral, story that is a thriller, that is a horror, that is absolutely gut-wrenching, unnerving, tense, unlike anything we've ever played before. And that's why I love The Last of Us, and I love the direction they're going in here, and what that could lead to, where that could, how that looks in The Last of Us Part 3 is something I am incredibly excited about. But let me know. What do you guys think, guys? Where do you think this story is headed? With The Last of Us Part 3, pretty much, it's all but confirmed at this point, but I believe it's definitely going to be coming at some point. Where do you guys think the story's going? Where's Ellie going? Why is the guitar left near the windowsill? What do you guys think, interpreting those final sequences in The Last of Us Part 2? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more The Last of Us content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of The Last Cast. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.